Yeah, I feel like I mean, there's a stereotype of, like, people saying Jesus is their boyfriend, like, so that's what like, I'm not
Is
trying
how common is that? Sorry, I haven't heard that before,
Really?
actually. Yeah,
Maybe it's
yeah.
just I don't know. I women no, it's not all women. Maybe it's just, like, certain circles. I mean, because there's
Sure.
different, like, church traditions which will value, like, intellect versus, like, emotions, which
Mm,
is kind of a shame. We tend to overcorrect where they think, "Oh, like, those 2 things are divorced," when in reality, like I mean, you've probably experienced this in your studies of, like, you can be studying something and be so emotionally moved by it, and then
mhm.
also, if you have this sort of emotional response, but you can't articulate where it's coming from, then it loses its sort of power and meaning.
Sure,
S
yeah.
I think people, like, who grew up in I guess it depends on the church tradition you grew up on. If you grew up in a bit more of, like, an intellectual, like, heady church tradition, maybe this is kinda like, "Whoa, pump the brakes," but if you grew up in, like, maybe a more charismatic, like, type of setting, I feel like and that's kind of where I grew up, like, I feel like that type of talk, is more common, but I guess the idea that I'm talking about is, I was thinking about it more, is probably less about God being a romantic and more about God being beautiful, and
Mm,
God being sovereign and detailed, and I feel like that in and of itself, whether or not you relate to Jesus as being your boyfriend or not, um, that's I feel like that's really significant to see God because when we see God as the utmost desirable and beautiful one, and also like sovereign and caring about these little things of our lives, and we realize that there's nothing off limits that he doesn't care about, I guess, in our relating to him. You know, because if we
mm,
don't see him as beautiful or as sovereign or detailed, then there are things in my life that I care about that I'm like, "Oh, God probably doesn't care about that. He's too big to care about that." Whereas
mm.
if we see him as someone who cares about, like, those little things and we're like, "Oh, this is actually something that he cares about as well or would be interested in," just like a good friend is, or like a
Yeah.
good